They said I was lucky to have a best friend like Jason. Charming, athletic, the guy every girl wanted and every guy admired.
And she?
Her name was Emily, the girl I secretly wrote poems about. They were picture perfect. And I was the girl in the background, smiling when I wanted to disappear, laughing when it stung. But that night, when Jason showed up at my door asking how to keep her, that night everything changed. Not because I said yes, but because I had already fallen in love with the girl he didn't understand. My name is Claire Whitman. I'm 26. I live in Boise, Idaho. And this is the story I never thought I'd tell. Jason and I met in 3rd grade. He offered me his last gushers at lunch, and I handed him a broken pencil I'd colored with purple marker because it looked cooler. That's the kind of friendship we had, silly, effortless, and somehow permanent. By high school, he was everyone's favorite, varsity everything prom king, the kind of guy who could charm a math teacher into giving him an extension and convince a janitor to unlock the gym late at night so we could play one-on-one. He made everything feel like it mattered less, like even the bad days could be shrugged off with a laugh and a game of horse.
Me?
I was the loyal shadow. Honors classes, chess team, debate, not the type of girl anyone crushed on. My job was to take pictures for the yearbook, edit his college essays, and cheer him on from behind a lens. No one questioned it, especially not me. We stayed close through college. Different campuses. He went to UC Santa Barbara on a soccer scholarship. I stayed in Idaho for a double major in English and psychology. But we talked almost every week. Jason would call at midnight from a noisy party and say, "Claire, quick, what's a word for when something feels real but isn't?" I'd laugh, "You mean surreal?" And he'd shout it into a game of taboo, like I'd just saved the world. It didn't matter where we were. I was always his lifeline. Then 2 years ago, he moved back to Boise after tearing his ACL. I picked him up from the airport in my scratched-up Honda Civic, and even with a knee brace and an attitude of defeat, he smiled like nothing had changed. 3 weeks later, he introduced me to Emily. She was everything I wasn't, radiant, confident, loud in the way that made people want to lean in closer. She was a graphic designer from Portland who'd just relocated for work. Jason had met her at a fitness rehab center. Of course he had. She looked like someone carved from summer. Tanned arms. Tattoos with stories. The kind of girl who wore ripped jeans like they were couture. "I think she might be it," he said one night, as we sat on my balcony sipping warm tea because his stomach was messed up from pain meds. I nodded, smiled, dug my fingernails into the side of my mug. Have you ever felt like someone walks into a room and suddenly you understand what music is trying to say? He added. I wanted to tell him I felt that the first time she laughed. But I said, "Yeah, sounds like you're really into her." He grinned like a boy. "Claire, you'd like her." I did. God help me, I did. When we finally met, I was wearing my oversized cardigan, the one with fraying sleeves I pretended was boho, when really it was just old. Emily walked in with ripped denim overalls and glitter on her collarbone. She hugged me like we'd known each other for years. "Oh my God, you're Claire?
He talks about you all the time."
I'm like, low-key jealous. I smiled, my face doing all the right things while my chest cracked in invisible places. We all hung out a lot. Movies, hikes, brunch on Sundays. She called me her grounding friend, the one who made her feel calm when her ADHD spun her thoughts like a Ferris wheel. But every time they kissed in front of me, something inside twisted. Not because they were wrong for each other, but because they looked so right. And still, it felt like I was the one who saw her. The one who noticed how she bit her cheek when she was deep in thought, or how her left hand trembled slightly when she was anxious. Jason didn't notice those things. He loved her, sure, but he saw her like a painting. I saw her like a mirror. And still, I kept the lines where they were drawn. Until they started fighting. It started with little things. Missed texts. Canceled plans. Jason getting defensive. Emily withdrawing. Then came the confessions, usually over late-night calls. "She says I'm not emotionally present," Jason vented. "Are you?" I asked gently. "What the hell does that even mean?" he scoffed. I bit my lip. It means you don't see her. Then one night, just past 11:30 p.m., Jason knocked on my door. His face was tired, lips pressed in frustration. He held 2 bottles of beer and that old, familiar guilt in his eyes. "I need your help," he said. "Jason." "Claire, she's slipping away from me. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Please. I need advice." I froze. Like my entire world collapsed into a single, impossible moment. How do you teach someone to love the person you're in love with? I didn't answer right away. Just stared at him, my throat burning. I whispered finally, "you have to listen better. To her silences, not just her words." He stared at me like I was speaking another language. But he nodded. "Can you maybe talk to her too?" he asked. "Just as a friend. You two get each other." That was the night everything started unraveling. The night I crossed a line I'd drawn with every fiber of my loyalty. And the night I began realizing that love, real love, doesn't always ask permission to bloom. I wish I could say I said no. That I told Jason I couldn't do it. That I set a boundary and walked away with dignity. But I didn't. I agreed to talk to her. Not because I thought I could fix things. Not even because I wanted to help him. But because I wanted to hear her voice again. We met at Devon Park, on a bench that faced the river, the wind catching the loose strands of her coppery hair like it was trying to carry pieces of her away. She wore a hoodie 3 sizes too big, the sleeves covering her hands. Her eyes were tired, rimmed in the kind of makeup that had been applied too early and worn too long. I didn't know what to say at first. So I handed her coffee. She took it in both hands and sighed. "Thanks," she said. "He told you we were not great?" I nodded. "He did." "I don't want to be the villain," she whispered. "You're not." Emily looked at me, really looked like she was searching my face for traps or judgment. She didn't find any. "I feel like I'm screaming and he hears thunder, not me." That line sat between us like a third person. "I get that," I said quietly. She stared at the river. "I hate that I feel more seen by you than by him." And just like that, the crack in my loyalty became a canyon. We talked for hours. About her job, her childhood, how she still sometimes woke up in the middle of the night convinced she was failing at being loved. "I overshare because silence terrifies me," she laughed bitterly. "I'm afraid if I'm quiet too long, people will forget I'm there." I wanted to tell her I'd never forget. Instead, I just said, "You're not too much." She blinked. Tears welled. "Jason says I overwhelm him sometimes." "He doesn't mean to," I offered. She nodded. "I know. But that doesn't make it hurt less." That was the moment I stopped lying to myself. The moment I admitted that this wasn't about helping Jason anymore. It was about finding the one person who made my world tilt sideways and wondering what it meant to see her this clearly when she wasn't even mine. Over the next few weeks, Emily and I grew closer. Under the pretense of helping, I became her sounding board. Her place of refuge. We texted late into the night, book recommendations, jokes, voice notes with sleepy rants about clients and art block. Jason barely noticed. He was preoccupied, job hunting, rehabbing his knee again, constantly frustrated that Emily didn't seem light anymore. "She used to be so fun," he said once. "She's still her," I replied. "You just have to meet her where she is." "Don't get poetic on me, Claire," he joked. But his laugh was hollow. In the meantime, I started writing again. I hadn't written creatively in over a year.
But now?
Words poured out of me like wildfire. Poems, essays, long emotional letters I never sent. I started posting anonymous blog entries under the name Shadow/Spark. I wrote about emotional labor, about being the invisible friend, about loving people who don't choose you. One post, titled "The Girl You Ask for Help Loving Someone Else," went viral. I didn't tell a soul it was mine. But the comments broke me open. This is my story. I feel like someone read my soul. I didn't know how to explain this pain until now. For the first time, I felt seen in a way that didn't require someone else to speak on my behalf. And in that quiet confidence, I started rebuilding. I signed up to lead a community writing circle at the local library. At first, Only 4 people showed up, 3 retirees and a shy teenager who refused to speak. But week by week, it grew. We wrote letters to our past selves. We wrote apologies we never intended to send.
We cried. We laughed.
I watched the teen write a poem called Static in my mother's car that made the room fall silent. One afternoon, an older woman named Linda leaned over her notebook and muttered, "This machine hates me," while trying to print her memoir excerpt. I chuckled and offered to help. As her story came to life on the page, she whispered, "You brought my baby into my living room again." I didn't know what she meant until she showed me a black and white photo of her daughter, long gone. The girl was smiling, holding a sunflower. "She used to write like this," Linda said, voice trembling. "Before the cancer." I held her hand and whispered, "She'd be proud." It didn't make headlines, but it mattered. The writing group became my heartbeat. I wasn't trying to be anything anymore, not Jason's support system, not Emily's secret emotional outlet. Just me.
Claire.
A girl with too many words, and finally enough space to say them. Emily noticed the shift. "You seem lighter," she said one evening when we met at a small cafe near her apartment. "I'm just choosing different things now," I replied. She nodded. "I like this version of you. It's like you're finally in the frame, not behind the lens." I smiled. It was the most honest compliment I'd ever received. Still, guilt lingered. Jason had no idea how often we talked. No idea how many of his conversations with her were shaped by things she and I unraveled first. No idea that the girl he loved was emotionally anchoring herself to someone else. And I had no idea what came next. But I was done pretending I was just a side character in my own story. I was writing again, living again. Not for Jason. Not even for Emily. For the version of me who used to cry on the bathroom floor, believing love was only for other people. The writing group took on a life of its own. By spring, we had 32 regular attendees, a rotation of local guest speakers, and a partnership with Boise's downtown library to host seasonal showcases. Some nights, the meeting room couldn't hold everyone, so we moved into the larger event space upstairs. People came early just to get front row seats for open mic night. I started an online platform, just a blog at first, called Hollow to Harbor. A space for people who felt invisible to write anonymously and share their grief, their healing, their unsaid things. Within 3 months, the blog had over 10,000 subscribers. By the 6th, we were topping 65,000 monthly readers. A local journalist from the Idaho Press featured us in a piece called "Letters We'll Never Send: How One Boise Woman is Helping Strangers Heal with Words." It was surreal. I read the article 3 times, then folded it neatly and slid it into my bookshelf. I didn't show Jason. I didn't even tell Emily. Part of me was afraid to claim it out loud. Another part didn't want it to feel performative. The truth was, I was proud. And for the first time, that didn't need applause to feel real. But still, I noticed the silence. My mom didn't ask about the library events. My dad, who used to send me job listings with titles like legal assistant or marketing coordinator, now just offered tired nods when I mentioned my projects. At a family dinner, I tried to talk about how the site had started gaining international users. My cousin Rachel asked, "Is it like a diary thing?" Before I could answer, my brother Evan muttered, "Teaching old folks to click buttons? Real noble work." They all laughed. I laughed too, quietly, while something inside me hardened like a wall. They didn't get it. They never had. To them, I was still Claire, the emotional kid who wrote in margins, cried too easily, and wasted potential by choosing English lit over business school. To them, I was a soft girl doing soft things. But outside that house, we were onboarding over 1,200 community members per month to the platform. The writing group had expanded to include virtual sessions. We'd launched a private letter exchange program that connected strangers for anonymous emotional pen pal experiences. The first batch of letters was so moving, I cried for hours. One woman wrote, "Dear stranger, I haven't felt brave enough to speak to my father in 5 years. Your words told me I could." "I did," he cried. Emily eventually found out. She sent me a text late one night. A screenshot of the blog post titled The Shape of Silence, followed by just 3 words. Was this you? I stared at the screen for minutes, heartbeat pounding, then typed back.
Yeah.
All of it. She replied instantly. Claire, it's beautiful. You're beautiful. This matters so much. I didn't tell Jason she knew. Not because I was hiding, but because he didn't ask. In fact, we were speaking less and less. He'd grown moody,
Quick to snap. Quick to leave.
One evening, we all met at a mutual friend's birthday, one of those backyard bonfire things with mason jar drinks and acoustic music. I stood by the drink table when I overheard Jason talking to someone behind me. Yeah, Claire's doing that emotion blog thing, he said. It's cool, I guess. She's always been kind of a free spirit. A free spirit. Like someone you admire at a distance but never take seriously. Like I was a balloon floating around in his life. Nice to look at. Easy to forget. I turned around. He smiled at me like nothing had happened. I smiled back. Like it didn't matter.
But it did.
The next day, I added a new post. Title: Being Someone's Second Language. I didn't name names. I never did. But it came from a place deeper than sadness. From the place where you finally stop asking to be heard. The post exploded.
Shares.
Comments. Letters. People who'd never met me sending emails like, I thought I was the only one who felt this way. You wrote the story of my silence. One user from Seattle Med. Thank you. I'm a school teacher, and every day I feel like I'm talking into a void. You reminded me I still matter. Jason didn't mention the post. Didn't ask about the growth. Didn't seem to realize that the girl who used to proofread his essays now ran one of the fastest-growing empathy networks in the Northwest. But Emily did. She kept showing up in small, intentional ways. She sent me book recommendations that reminded her of my work. She'd drop off tea outside my door with notes like, for when the world's too loud. She even asked to come sit in on a virtual session one week, just to listen. Claire, she said one night after meeting, I don't think Jason knows how rare you are. I paused. I don't think he ever needed to. We looked at each other for a long time. Neither of us said the thing. But it lived in the silence. Warm, alive, pulsing just beneath the surface. That night, she shared a secret. I read every letter on your site, she confessed. I even submitted one. You did. I blinked. She nodded. It was anonymous. I never expected it to go anywhere. But the person who replied? She saved me. I smiled. I bet your letters saved her too. She looked down, voice soft. It was about you. That's when I realized our connection wasn't imagined. It wasn't just proximity or sympathy or emotional projection. It was real. And for the first time, I felt strong enough not to run from that. Still, I didn't act on it. Because it wasn't about winning someone. It wasn't about revenge or validation. It was about knowing, deep in my bones, that I was finally becoming the person I'd always buried under loyalty and self-abandonment. And I didn't need recognition for that to be true. I should have said something the moment Emily looked at me with those teary eyes. But I didn't. I stayed quiet. And my silence screamed louder than any confession ever could. It started with one accidental moment. Jason had asked me to help him write a birthday letter to Emily. A real, handwritten one. He said, You're better with words, Claire. Help me say something that'll make her cry happy tears. What he didn't know, what he never knew, was that I had already written Emily hundreds of unsent letters. So that night, I pulled out one of those pages. I adjusted a few lines. And I handed it to him. When Emily read it a week later at her birthday dinner, she cried. Not because it was from Jason, but because she recognized my words. I remember her pulling me aside that night after everyone had left the restaurant. We stood under the amber glow of a street lamp in downtown Boise. The summer air was warm, but I was shivering. She held the letter in her hand, pressed to her chest like a shield. You wrote this, didn't you? She asked softly. My voice caught in my throat. Jason wrote it. She blinked. No, Claire. Jason signed it. But this sounds like you. The rhythm. The words. The way it talks about my freckles and my morning voice. I stayed silent. I couldn't even look her in the eyes. Claire, she whispered, her voice almost trembling. Tell me the truth. Still, I said nothing. After that night, things started falling apart. Not suddenly, but like seams coming undone one by one. Jason started getting more distant with her. He didn't understand why she'd stopped texting back with hearts or smiling during their FaceTime calls. He thought she was losing interest. But really, she was just looking for something real. And the problem was she had already found it. In me. One night in mid-October, Jason came over, frustrated and confused. She's pulling away, Claire.
I don't know why. We were sitting in my apartment.
Rain tapped gently on the windows, and my cat Salem curled up between us on the couch. Did I do something wrong? He asked. I wanted to say, no, Jason.
You didn't.
But you're not what she needs. You don't see her the way I do. Instead, I offered vague advice. Maybe she just needs more presence. Try being around her without trying to fix anything. He nodded, hopeful. You always know what to say. I smiled weakly, because every word I gave him came from the part of me that wished I were the one she loved. The real breaking point happened 2 weeks later. Jason invited me to a cabin weekend up near Coeur d'Alene. He said he wanted to get away from the noise, and Emily needed a break too. So it was the three of us. That Friday night, we sat by the fireplace. Emily was wearing one of my old hoodies she'd borrowed a few months ago and never returned. She looked at peace, but distant. Later, as Jason stepped out to get more firewood, Emily and I were left alone in the flickering glow. I've been thinking about something, she said suddenly. My heart started racing.
She turned to me.
Do you think it's possible to be in love with someone and not realize it until it's too late? I froze. She was looking right at me, and I knew she wasn't talking about Jason. But still, I said nothing. The next day, Emily barely spoke to either of us. Jason noticed and assumed it was just stress. But I knew better, because that morning, I found a note tucked under the coffee pot. It was addressed to me, in Emily's handwriting. Claire, I read your old journals. The one you left under your couch the night I slept over. I wasn't looking, but I saw enough. I'm not mad. I'm just heartbroken. Not because you love me, but because you didn't think I could love you back. I needed you to say something. Anything. But now I don't know what to believe. Emily. She left the cabin early that morning. Jason thought she had a headache. But I knew she was running, from the confusion, from the pain, and maybe from herself. When I got home, I collapsed onto my bed and sobbed. All these years of hiding my truth, of trying to protect my friendship with Jason, of trying to spare Emily from this messy reality. It had cost me everything. Days passed. Then weeks. Jason texted her, called her, even showed up at her place. But Emily wasn't ready to talk. And I was stuck in a spiral of regret. Regret for staying silent, for lying to myself, for loving in the shadows. One night, I walked past the bookstore where Emily and I had spent hours getting lost between poetry shelves. And for the first time, I went inside alone. I picked up a book of poems by Mary Oliver, flipped to a random page, and read, Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I stood there for 20 minutes, frozen. Then I bought the book, went home, and finally wrote Emily the letter I should have written years ago. It wasn't polished. It wasn't poetic. But it was real. Emily, I love you. Not in the way people toss around that word, but in the way silence aches, in the way poems bleed, in the way a soul waits for home. I never said anything because I thought you deserved simple. And I've never been simple. I'm layered and scared and too full of feelings. But the truth is, you were never a mistake. Loving you was never wrong. Even if you never feel the same, I needed you to know. And I'm sorry.
Claire.
I mailed it. Then I waited. The air outside felt different. Like a storm had passed through and left the sky confused about whether it should mourn or breathe relief. It had been 3 weeks since the night Emily came to my apartment soaked in tears and rain. Since she had whispered, I need to know if you feel it too. and I had kissed her. 3 weeks of silence from Jason. 3 weeks of chaotic clarity between me and the girl I once only dreamed about. But life doesn't pause when you make bold moves. It retaliates. I walked into work Monday morning and felt the shift. People glanced up from their cubicles as if they knew. Jason's cousin worked in the HR department. Gossip had veins in this town. I reached my desk and found a sticky note. See me
Now.
Mr. Thomas. I swallowed hard. My boss wasn't one for drama. But his office door stood ajar, a storm brewing behind his furrowed brows.
Claire, sit.
I did. He leaned back, rubbing his temple. Off the record. What the hell is going on between you, Jason, and Emily? I blinked. Jason doesn't work here, I said, trying to deflect.
No.
But half the company plays rec softball with him. He's talking. My throat tightened. What's he saying? He looked straight through me. That you stole his girl. That you used him. That you lied for months. It felt like ice water was poured over my chest. I exhaled slowly. I didn't steal anyone, I said. You can't steal someone who's not held by love. I left early that day. I needed air.
And I needed Emily.
She was waiting at my door with takeout and an apologetic smile. Her hair in a messy bun, sleeves of her hoodie pushed up like she'd been pacing. I heard Jason's been talking, she said softly. I nodded. To everyone. She set the food down on the coffee table and took my hands. Claire, do you want to do this?
Us.
Really do this? Even if people think we're monsters? She kissed the corner of my mouth. Let them think. I'd rather be hated with you than loved in a lie. And that was the night we made it official. Quietly. Without fanfare. But nothing stays quiet forever. Friday. The softball league semifinals. Jason was there. I went because our team needed a scorekeeper. Emily came to support a coworker. It wasn't meant to be dramatic. But drama isn't always invited, it gatecrashes. He walked straight up to me after the game. You got something to say to me, Claire? He asked, chest puffed like a cornered animal. I stood up. Jason.
No.
Don't Jason me like we're friends. Friends don't sneak around. Friends don't pretend. I trusted you. The team went silent. People turned their heads like a reality show was unfolding in real time. I never meant to hurt you, I said quietly. You didn't just hurt me. You humiliated me, he snapped. In front of everyone. I met his eyes. You wanted advice on how to love her, Jason. You never even noticed she was slipping away. That's rich coming from someone who never had the guts to tell me the truth. You're right, I said. I should've. I was afraid.
I didn't know what it meant.
And then, I fell. For her? He asked bitterly. For me? I said. I finally chose something that wasn't about being your sidekick. Or your emotional medic. I chose myself.
He didn't speak after that.
Just turned, jaw clenched, and walked away. Later that night, I sat with Emily under the stars on my balcony. Do you think he'll ever forgive us? I asked. She was quiet for a long moment before she said, maybe one day. But Claire, forgiveness isn't the same as permission. I nodded, tears catching in the corners of my eyes. I don't need his permission to be happy, I said. She kissed my hand. Then let's start from there. Jason was the kind of man who didn't take no for an answer. Not in sports, not in business, not in life. So when Emily stopped answering his texts, he ramped it up. Flowers.
Calls.
Unexpected visits to her job at the floral shop on 9th. She was polite, professional, but removed. It was Jason who first accused me of something. I think you told her something, he said one evening, pacing my living room like a wolf sniffing betrayal. You're the only one she trusts. The only one she'd listen to. I didn't deny it, because denial felt like lying to myself too. I told her the truth, I said softly, that she deserves to be seen. Fully. His eyes darkened, not in rage, but confusion. You're in love with her, aren't you? It wasn't a question. And I didn't give an answer. I hadn't seen Emily in 2 weeks. Not since the kiss at the park. Not since she walked away from both of us. But that morning, just before dawn, she was at my door. No makeup. Hair pulled back in a bun. She looked exhausted and beautiful and scared. And she held something in her hand, a little ceramic flower, one I had admired once at the shop but never bought. "I quit my job," she said quietly. "I'm moving." The words hit me like ice water.
What?
"Where?" "San Diego. My sister's offering me a room, a fresh start." I nodded, even though every part of me screamed no. "That's smart." She laughed bitterly. "That's all?" "No, please stay. No confession of love." I looked at her, really looked, her hands trembling, her lips pressed together like she was trying to hold in more than words. "You kissed me," I said. "And then you ran." She stepped forward. "Because I was terrified. Because I was falling in love with someone I wasn't supposed to." "Jason," I said bitterly. She shook her head.
No. You.
My world stopped. She walked into my arms, and this time, she didn't run. This time, her kiss was soft and slow and certain. Like she had finally chosen the truth over the chaos. "I don't want to run anymore," she whispered. "But I need to know if you feel it too." I took her face in my hands and whispered, "I've been loving you in silence for 2 years, Emily. I was just waiting for you to hear it." We didn't fall into love that day. We had already fallen. That day, we just stopped pretending we hadn't. Jason called once after that. Just once. He left a voicemail. "I get it now. I saw it the whole time. I just didn't want to admit I was losing her to you." I never called back. Not because I didn't care, but because this wasn't about him anymore. This was about us. The first days after Emily and I finally spoke, our truths were strange. Not in a bad way, just quiet, like we'd both stepped out of the storm and into a field neither of us recognized yet. The kind of silence that isn't empty, just waiting. We didn't rush into labels or declarations. We sat together on rooftops watching the sun fall over Boise, walked the greenbelt holding hands like teenagers unsure of what came next. And I liked it that way. I liked that she needed time to feel safe, to build something not from borrowed bricks of past relationships, but from the ground up, with me. One night, about a month after that morning on my doorstep, Emily asked me if I wanted to drive with her to San Diego. "Not to move," she clarified. "Just to see where I thought I'd escape to. I think I owe it to myself and to you to stop running by choice this time." So we did. We packed up my car, old, stubborn, loyal, and we hit the highway like we were writing the first chapter of a brand new book. The drive was long and warm and full of music. Emily made a playlist titled Claire's Reckless Heart that was 80% love songs and 20% emo indie ballads that somehow captured everything we weren't saying out loud. We talked about childhood, about first crushes, about how her mother always told her, "Don't ever let a good man go," but never told her what to do if the good one wasn't a man at all. We talked about the silence we'd been taught to swallow, about how complicated it is to love someone your best friend had touched. We cried at a rest stop outside Bakersfield. And then we laughed so hard over terrible gas station sandwiches that we forgot why we were crying in the first place. San Diego was gorgeous, but not for her. She knew the moment we crossed the last bridge that she wasn't meant to live there. She turned to me at a red light and said, "It's beautiful, Claire. But it's not where my roots belong." "Where do they belong?" I asked. She reached for my hand and squeezed. "With you." We drove back a different way, stopping through small towns, staying at bed and breakfasts where people called us ladies and gave us extra muffins in the mornings. By the time we got back to Boise, things weren't new anymore. They were real. Jason and I saw each other again eventually.
It was bound to happen.
Boise's not that big. He was at a local fundraiser for the animal shelter, Emily's event, actually. I was helping set up when I saw him by the punch bowl, staring at me like he still hadn't decided whether to forgive or forget. I walked over. He didn't flinch. "Hey," I said. "Hey." Silence. And then, "She looks happy," he said, nodding toward her. "She is." Another pause. Then, "So, do you?" I nodded. Took a while. He looked down, swirled his drink. I was angry for a long time. At both of you. But I think now maybe I was angry because I knew you were right for her before I ever asked for your advice. That was Jason.
Direct.
Brutally self-aware when he let himself be. Do you hate me?
I asked.
No, he said, and it was honest. But I'm still learning how not to miss her. I put a hand on his shoulder. That's fair. And that was it. We didn't rekindle our friendship that day, but we took one step toward peace. And sometimes that's enough. Now, Emily and I live in a small duplex near the river. She started her own floral studio, and I help with the books when she lets me. I still write poetry, some published, some scribbled in notebooks she steals and reads while I sleep.
We argue sometimes.
About laundry. About movie choices. About whether pineapple belongs on pizza. But she never walks away in silence anymore. And I never let fear speak louder than love. One night, under the stars, I asked her the question that had haunted me since this all began. Would you have chosen me if he hadn't asked for advice? She looked at me like I was missing something obvious. I was already choosing you, she whispered. I just didn't know it yet. That's the thing about love. It doesn't always arrive with a grand entrance or fireworks. Sometimes, it grows quietly in the corner of your life, waiting for you to stop talking long enough to hear it breathe. And when you finally do, you realize it had been standing there the whole time, just waiting for you to look back. It's been 2 years since that final conversation in the coffee shop. 2 years since I let the silence between Emily and me become the soil where something tender could finally grow. Jason moved to Colorado. He texts now and then, memes, memories, sometimes songs he thinks I'd like. We're not close anymore, but I'm not angry. He loved her in his own way, just not the way she needed.
Just not the way I did.
Emily and we didn't fall into some cinematic montage. No rain-drenched kisses or violins. Just slow healing. Honest conversations. So many walks around the lake that the geese started recognizing us. There were days I thought she'd walk away again. Days she almost did. Days I almost let her. But then one October afternoon, as the amber trees whispered above us, she slipped her hand into mine. No big declaration. Just warmth. Real. Present. Undeniable. And somehow, that was louder than any "I love you." Today, our apartment smells like cinnamon and coffee. There's a half-finished puzzle on the kitchen table, a playlist humming in the background, and Emily humming along to it while baking pumpkin bread. I'm at my desk, writing this, surrounded by sticky notes of poems and first drafts. My latest piece just got accepted by an indie journal in Portland. Emily framed the acceptance email like it was a Pulitzer. Funny how life turns. I used to believe love had to look a certain way. Boy meets girl. Best friend stays in the background. The end. But love isn't linear. It's messy and raw. It hides behind unsaid words and shows up at the most inconvenient times. It asks you to be brave.
To choose.
And I chose her. Not because Jason lost her, but because I finally stopped pretending I hadn't loved her all along. So if you're reading this, wondering whether your silence is protecting someone else or just punishing yourself, here's my advice.
Speak.
Even if your voice shakes. Even if your timing is terrible. Even if the world tells you you're wrong. Because sometimes, the heart knows the way long before the map ever catches up. And sometimes, the person you're meant to be with has been sitting across from you all along, waiting for you to finally see them.